It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. If you reach out to me through my email, oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Really excited about today's show. We have Nicole Lee Pettis. You can find her on Instagram under Nicole Lee Tattooer. You can find her on Twitter, Broke Babe Films on Twitter too as well. Nicole Lee, are you there?
I'm here. Hello.
Thank you so much.
So excited to be here.
Nicole, you're my first guest on video, my first video show.
I'm excited. That's so special to me.
And thank God I found a guest who was patient with me because we're 20 minutes in. We're just getting started.
No. You're good.
No, thank you so much. But before we get started in your story here, tell the audience about yourself. Who is Nicole Lee Pettis, Nicole Tattooer?
Well, obviously you know my name. My name is Nicole Lee. I am a Florida girl, single mother of 2 daughters. My birthday's coming up in the summer. I'll be 41, and I've been tattooing for almost 20 years now, and I'm a tattoo artist in South Florida where I live. I have a nonprofit that I've started that works with providing support for sex trafficking survivors, whether it's like therapy, housing resources, just community, friendship, things like that. We hold events and protest local and just kind of like, gather with other women around here who have kind of been through the same thing as I have, or share similar life experiences, whether they're in the past or present. I grew up, I come from like your typical, like sad Florida girl story. Like, yeah. I didn't have a father. My mom was addicted to drugs. I grew up in DCF care. One of the big monumental things that kind of happened to me as a young girl that kind of shaped who I was going to kind of be after that was at 9 years old, I was almost kidnapped in Davie, Florida by a local pedophile who was a stranger to me. And he assaulted me sexually and then like dragged me down the street with a knife, and he was trying to like drag me into the woods. I managed to fight him off and escape. And he was caught, and I went and I testified against him. It was like a 1.5-month trial. When I was 10 years old, I went and my testimony was really compelling, and he ended up getting 25 years in jail, the max sentence. And that was kind of like the start, and it just really like snowballed, like the traumas just kind of kept coming after that moment. After motherhood and kind of going through some postpartum and like alcoholism stuff, nothing too like severe, but just like recognizing that like I was different and there's something that wasn't clicking for me. On paper, you had this like award-winning tattoo artist, mother, like I'm living my best life, living in other countries, traveling the world. But, really I was waking up every day and looking in the mirror and I was like, I want to die. Like, I don't feel like a human being anymore, and like what's going on. And when I started kind of looking into that trauma and like what it was and what it meant and who it was making me be, I had realized like a lot of stuff that I had done and thought was normal in my 20s was actually like, really, really terrible. And not only was it terrible and dark, but I was promoting it as positivity to young women as if what I was doing was right, and I had like, I call it like an awakening. I became a business owner, a taxpayer, a mother. I started like looking into things and not believing everything that people were telling me around me. And I had this like massive shift in life. And I started getting really into like investigative journalism and like outing local predators, talking about my own personal journey with being a survivor of sex trafficking and working in the adult industry as a young girl. And that's really encompasses who I am today. Is I would say like an activist and an advocate for women that have been through what I have that can't speak for themselves.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm from Vegas. I've only been in Florida for a few years. And back in Vegas, I had so many resources to send people to. If you ran across someone who's in trouble with sex trafficking, something like that, I had resources to send people to, and there's nothing down here in Florida. So do you have those resources to help people? If I ran across people,
so I do have resources, and what's crazy is all the resources I have, whether it be like halfway house housing for women that suffer from mental health or substance abuse, be as repercussions of like the things that they've been through in the past, not repercussions, but you get what I'm saying, as like, that's what they're paying for. Or, I have a lot of connections with different local therapists and psychologists, and I've jumped through all those hoops trying to get help and finding help. I mean, the last time when I went to treatment this last time for mental health, I went voluntarily for 30 days. I could not find a facility. I could not get insurance. I could not get any support from my government, from my state, nothing. Yeah. There was nothing there for me. And I made a public plea on Instagram begging for help. And I ended up getting a scholarship for 30 days for free into a trauma program that changed my life. And through going through all those steps of disparity and multiple suicide attempts and multiple treatment centers, state funded, this, that, I realized like, if I wasn't so like, didn't take no for an answer and like independent or already like in a constant survival mode, I would have never made it to the light at the end of the tunnel. I would have given up a long time ago. And that's why I was like, let me start this community and start helping women find these resources. So yes, I do have those resources. I also just offer friendship and understanding and a space to hold for these women to share their experience. We talked about the Jeffrey Epstein thing a little bit, and like something that people don't realize is like, I'm a 41-year-old woman, and it took me almost 30 years before I was able to talk about something. Mm-hmm. And I was still able, even 30 years later, to get a legal team, go after justice and make a police report. And women don't realize that like the statute of limitations really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you might have a lawsuit, you might have a way to get justice. And once again, just basic information, knowledge is power. And I didn't know any of that until I was in it myself. And, it was because of the Jeffrey Epstein case and all of that I was able to learn those things. So if I'm able to pass it to other women, like that's really what keeps me going today. It's not tattooing. It's not anything. It's not a car, a home. It's like helping other women, because every day I wake up and I'm like, you're a miracle. How are you still alive? I should have given up a long time ago, just at 9 years old, to be through what I've been through. And then I've probably been abused sexually over 100 times since the age of from 9 to about 25 years old. To admit that and speak that into existence is like, I know I'm not special. I say that all the time. I know there's so many more women like me, specifically in this area of South Florida with no resources. So hopefully like, I can help change that a little bit, because you're right. There's
nothing here in Florida.
And that's why the women in the Epstein case took so long to come forward, because I can assure you there's no one out there trying to help us. I mean, I was abused under DCF care with a caseworker at a government funded facility. Yeah. How you would think I would be as safe? No, it's not. It's not really like that,
there's that story about those like 13 kids, and their parents went and they renewed their vows in Vegas, and they called these kids who were rescued from the House of Horrors. And then when you look right, I all have that same weird haircut. Now, when you look into that story, the kids were rescued from the House of Horrors, and they were put into other houses of horrors. The houses they were put in by DPS were just as bad as the place they were taken out. It's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, by the age of like 13 in DCF care, I was basically an adult, but it took me until 17 for the judge to even look at me to be emancipated, when I would have been much better off on my own. Instead, I got filtered into like group homes and halfway houses where I was mixed in with 18-year-old women and 18-year-old men. And I'm 12, 13, 14, you do the math. What do like I was pretty much set up for failure. Yeah. Had I not been taken away from my family and there been more resources implemented for my teenage mother, I think I would have ended up a lot better off. But the universe, God, whatever it is, chose me to endure things that he knew I could handle so that I could maybe help people in the future. But yeah,
if
Florida's
the
a tough
mom in the
place
first
to be.
place has had resources to raise her kids, and then we prevent these other things, and 25 years later. But by the way, you mentioned 25. This guy was sentenced to 25 years for raping a 9-year-old. How much time did he actually do?
So it technically it was molestation, sexual assault. There was no penetration. He was like he grabbed me, and I was wearing like little short shorts, and he started like filling up my vagina and my buttocks from the backside. And I peed my pants. It was a natural reaction. Sure. They actually were able to pull my DNA and see that I urinated myself during that time. So that was like, that was like a really positive thing that happened as far as our case went for evidence, was that I had pissed on myself. And so this is what's crazy about my case, and is in the state of Florida, it's not considered kidnapping unless you remove. It's considered kidnapping as long as you remove them for more than 2 feet from where they stand, right? So it should have been kidnapping, because he had dragged me from one end of the road, probably for, I would say, 2 football fields. We were fighting. Like, it was a long battle. Me and this man, he was 36 at the time. His name is Aller Valentine. You can look him up. It's actually a really interesting case. Fast forward, he now has a website proclaiming his innocence and trying to get off the sexual offenders list. It's crazy. That's like a whole nother case in itself. But anyways, so he ended up only getting attempted kidnapping, which the max sentence was 25 years. Now, at the time when I was a witness and I testified, I had a guardian ad litem, and I did have my caseworker. They did nothing for me. I had to look at this man in the face while the defense questioned me. When the prosecution questioned me, we were able to put a screen in front of him so I didn't have to see him. But you're removing the screen when I'm there, so it makes no sense. I looked at him every day. I have chills right now. And at that time, I did not admit to the Davie Police Department that he had touched me sexually. I was appalled. I was embarrassed. I said that he just tried to drag me down the street. I didn't speak on being Sorry, I didn't speak about being molested by him and physically assaulted by him sexually until in 2013, I found his website where he was proclaiming his innocence. He was calling me a liar. He had the original police report posted with my minor information, my name, everything, which is like, as a victim, that's taking away my victim's rights. But once again, we're in Florida and victims don't really have a lot of rights here. So he has this website. And once I found the website, that's when I started speaking out. Well, no, actually, he sexually molested me. He assaulted me because, once again, I'm not special. I wasn't that cute of a kid. I came from poverty. If he's trying to take me or touch me, there's definitely others, right? It's a pattern behavior. So he ended up only getting 25 years. He got out 2 years early. I was not contacted by the district attorney's office or the state, which is supposed to, what they tell you what will happen. They're going to let you know, hey, he's getting out of jail. This is his address. He will be registering as a sex offender. You are the victim. We want to let you know. I was never contacted. I found out through being an influencer on social media and somebody else finding it and bringing it to my attention.
Yeah, that whole system is a mess too. That whole thing is a mess too.
Yeah, and he lives 2 cities over in the town I went to high school in. So that shaped that was my childhood growing up in South Florida as a DCF kid.
So now you and I, we met through Joe Exotic. What's the Joe Exotic connection to all this?
Oh God. Okay, so let me preface that when Tiger King documentaries came out on Netflix, it wasn't typically the type of documentaries that I enjoyed. It wasn't something that was like my go-to. I didn't watch it when it first came out. I was kind of late to it. I wanted to watch it because of how viral he went. I mean, I recognized immediately that this man had become a household name. I mean, everyone knew who Joe Exotic and Carol Baskins was. You know, everyone knew.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, because I need to know the know, I was like, let me watch this. And when I watched it the first time, I just thought it was, you know, like probably the typical American. I was like, this is funny. Like, this is crazy. I can't even believe these people exist. And then I moved on to something else that was far more important or pressing as far as I'm concerned, because when I look at things that I enjoy investigating, it tends to be more of the, like, when there's assault to a woman or there's something going on where women are being harmed. So there was really none of that portrayed in the first Tiger King. And when the second one came out, it was kind of, but still, once again, it was really hyper fixated on Joe being this like massive manipulator criminal.
Yeah. And what people don't know is, but I didn't watch Tiger King until after I got to know Joe. That's why I met Joe and talked to Joe. But what people don't realize is that first season, he didn't cooperate with that first season at all. They bought that video from his ex-husband. Yeah. But they make it look like he's involved. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've always had a problem with a lot of Netflix productions is that they don't timestamp all of their archival footage material. They might do it in the first episode, like this was in 1996, but then they'll continue to play footage from 1996. And here's the thing. It's like when you're like, you know, doing your magic as an editor, that footage, I didn't realize it was old footage of Joe.
Yeah.
So fast forward to, you know, I'm like this activist and advocate. I'm holding protests at the Palm Beach courthouse. You know, like I had a sign that went viral on, I think it was I can't remember, but it was me in front of the Palm Beach courthouse, and I was holding a sign and it said, "Hey, Palm Beach, you dropped the ball on Epstein." Mm-hmm. And I guess one of Joe's PR people saw that post floating around somewhere, and through that found my Facebook. He messaged me on Facebook, and I still have all the messages and everything because, like I said, I'm kind of working on my own little film about that thing with Joe and what I'm doing.
And your Facebook is Nicole Lee Pettis, Pettas.
So my Facebook it's Nicole Lee Tattooer. Gotcha. I always use Tattooer for all of my film projects. My anything I'm doing, I use it. That and you know what, I'll tell you this is kind of on the outside, but just to give you a little bit of insight, the reason why I don't use Nicole Lee Pettis is because on Alex Valentine's website, my abuser is my real legal name on there, and when you Google it, it's one of the first things that come up, and it's like really hard, you know what I mean? And it's so sad that like that's my maiden name. That should be sacred to me. And unfortunately, it's not anymore. But so yeah, Nicole Lee Tattooer. So anyways.
Wait, have you ever tried to get a restraining order against him for that? He's not allowed to have contact with you, I'm sure. So
we were talking before we recorded about some of the legal proceedings I have happening. I'm involved in a couple civil suits. You best believe that is one of them that I am taking care of. There is no way that website will continue. So because the big part of it is he wants to get off the sex offenders list. And that's an abomination to women everywhere, especially in my town. So no way. But anyways, so Joe's PR team found me through my activism on social media. And I guess they reached out to me and they were basically like, hey, you know, would you be interested in like joining our team and like help us with like, you know, exposing some of these truths about these characters in Joe Exotic's case. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I told you, I just watched it. I thought it was funny. I kind of moved on. I didn't think it was like award-winning cinematic gold, and that was it for me. So I said to him realistically, I was like, well, tell me why you think he's innocent. And his PR person, and I'm going to keep his name anonymous to protect him, because anyone that supports Joe and speaks publicly against Joe, they immediately come after. And a lot of us have kids and families. So anyways, so his PR guy explained to me why he thought Joe was innocent, why he came to work for Joe, and showed me all this evidence that Netflix, it's not on the Netflix documentary. I went to Joe's website. I started reading it all myself. I started doing my own research. I looked into Joe's new attorney. I watched his press release, and then I started reading all of his court filings. Then I went back and I rewatched Tiger King. I probably watched close to, I would say, over 200 hours. I watched the first, the second, and then I watched every documentary or media coverage tied to every character in his case. And I was just obsessing myself with it. And the reason why is because his PR told me there's women who are being sex trafficked. There is women who are being brought in from other countries. They are enticing underage girls with exotic animals. And these girls have gotten boob jobs and tattoos and piercings. And then I'm connected to it through a tattooer, because you're not coming into my shop and getting tattooed and pierced underage. There's absolutely no way, you know? And then you think of the boob job thing. And I started asking Joe's questions. I started asking Joe's team questions to produce documents, and they did. They showed me the documents, and I was like, this is crazy. How has Netflix not touched on this? And then I started looking into Netflix a little bit, and I saw a common theme with some of their productions is they choose a narrative that will make them the most money. And it is going to be the most outlandish character out of the whole entire. So they saw him as, in my opinion, an easy target. Here's this gay, flamboyant ex-drug addict who plays with exotic animals, you know, and like, I'm also tied to the exotic animal world. I grew up in the exotic animal world being from Florida. So I just had all these little ties to it. And I was like, something's not right here. And hence me becoming, now I consider Joe a friend, you know,
which is not easy, by the way.
Yeah, it's not. I spoke to him, like, it's
I
a
love
lot,
Joe, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot. Like it takes a minute to really like the conversation to settle, and like, and I have ADHD and I'm kind of all over the place, and I don't take meds. I just, you know, I do like natural resources for that kind of stuff, and it's hard. So the both of us on the phone were like almost like squirrels, you know. He's like, sex trafficking, and I'm like, oh my god, and I'm like, you know, and he's like, I didn't murder, and it was just crazy. And the thing that changed in me and shifted was, not only did they create this narrative on this guy, but now I got to figure out, why did Netflix create this narrative? Why are people in power and entertainment creating this narrative? Why did they choose Joe to be on the forefront of like the lynching mob? And my assumption and my belief is that they're covering up something far darker and far worse. And Netflix was around filming when these criminals were doing criminal acts. And if they were around filming and production was like watching super young girls walk around and be mistreated, or people doing illegal dealings and not reporting it, even though Netflix is speaking to feds and Netflix is speaking to the lawyers and all the people working on the case, they're picking and choosing what information they want to get. And why? Because once again, what I believe, women don't matter. Women don't matter. We're at the biological women are at the bottom of the barrel. You know what I mean? And there's just all these other things that come before us. And I think that in Netflix's eyes, the whole Joe wanted to murder Carol Baskin, and, you know, like Jeff and Lauren are like laundering money. It's like, what? Are you not seeing what I'm seeing? So I'm, you know, like Joe is like, where's Tiger King 3? And like, I'd like to be interviewed. Joe'd like to be interviewed. Like, people that support Joe, you know, I believe that a lot of his closest friends turned their back on him and gave awful interviews completely publicly that millions and millions and millions of people saw, and all of them almost have retracted that and are now.
But the thing is, you know, even when you do those interviews, especially with Netflix, okay, and we talked off the air about Tom O'Neill and Chaos documentary about Charles Manson. He's not happy with Netflix at all about the way they treated his book treatment. And I had two other experiences with Netflix. One was the one about Maury Terry and the Son of Sam. That was a weird one. Yeah, where they smear Maury Terry at the end. They tried to get me to smear Terry too. I wouldn't sign the NDA at that. And the last one was the Octopus murders about Danny Casolaro and Bill Hamilton, where they smeared Bill Hamilton. You know, I got 3 hours exclusive with Bill Hamilton. He hasn't done an interview in 45 years, and I got this guy on tape. There's no, Netflix has an agenda going on there.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, so like 3 years ago, when I first started working on my documentary, I wrote a documentary treatment. If people like, most people don't know how documentaries are made. Everyone thinks that you just there's like 10,000 treatments submitted to like each platform. I mean, each production company a year or something like that. And they pick like maybe one or two to even like contact. So basically, like, I wrote a documentary treatment. I sent it to a couple. Because growing up and working in the adult entertainment world, and then I was married to someone in the music world, I always had connections in media. So I wrote my documentary treatment and I started sending it out. I had them sign NDAs and I started sending it out to some friends, just looking for feedback. Your camera cut out.
No, I want to blow my nose.
Basically just looking for feedback. And just to give you one person that I sent it to of the couple, and I'm going to, once again, leave his name anonymous, but he's a cinematographer and a producer on a massive Netflix series that is, they are covering all the United Kingdom football teams. So he's done big things. His wife has made documentaries that have been on Amazon and HBO. I sent him my treatment. He was like, I fucking love this. Like, I think there's something here. I would like to work on it. I'm going to send it to somebody at Plum Pictures. Okay. I don't know if you're probably familiar with Plum Pictures, but for the viewers, just a big documentary that they've done that people would know is they produced Girls Incarcerated on Netflix, and they also do a lot of Piers Morgan specials. So he was like, let me send it to them. I know someone over there. They're going to really like this. So they really liked it. They ended up reaching out to me. I took a couple calls. All of their films were being streamed on Netflix. So I already knew if they ended up taking my project, it was going to be a Netflix film. There was going to be Netflix hands in it, and it was going to make me look terrible as a human being. Because for one, based on my appearance, and based on my history, it is going to be very easy for me to be portrayed in a certain way in media if I do not have control over what is happening and what is coming out of my mouth, you know, and how it's being edited and what's really being told and not told. So I could have had my project immediately picked up, and I was like, no way. And I got some really good advice from a friend who does what you do. He's been on Ancient Aliens and has done a couple little like blurbs on podcasts. He was like, just produce it yourself. Just do it yourself. It's going to take forever, but do it yourself because you don't want it to end your life.
But real quick, the other issue, though, too, with Netflix and a lot of these other production companies, they get their hands on you. They get you to sign an NDA. Now they own your product, and they're dangling this carrot over your head that something's going to happen in the future, and your story is never going to get out because you signed away. Yeah, that's a whole nother stuff with these guys.
And there's very few streaming platforms or production companies that portray female victims in a positive light. I mean, even Virginia Roberts was looked at as a fucking, when I start talking about Epstein victims, that's when you'll get the curse words out of me. But even Epstein victims, like the way that they were spoken about and portrayed in certain things, it was almost like we were, or not we, because I wasn't one of them, but I'm just speaking as a victim in general of that type of abuse. It's like we were asking for it because we were poor, because we didn't have, it was like we were at odds, you know, it was inevitable. And it was inevitable that we would be forgotten about as well. And that's how they made them seem. And it was really, really sad. And I don't know if a lot of the common public that watches these crime documentaries looks at the female victims or the female characters and thinks like, you know, there's got to be more to this story here. Like you're only seeing one side of it. And that was really scary.
Off the air, when you mentioned the Netflix documentary on Epstein, right away I says, I didn't even watch it, to tell you the truth. And I've been quoted twice in the past 2 months in magazines and stuff like that about Epstein. And they just take a little tiny piece of your quote and it's out of context. And I said that, but it's not my overall what I believe and what I think, you know?
Right.
It's just so controlled. Epstein stuff is just so controlled. It's just worse than Joe Exotic.
The Netflix documentary about Epstein and the Epstein case brought me to the story, but I did, you know, I went much deeper. Like, I like to say that Netflix is like the Walmart of like media for like criminal investigating. Like a lot of the projects they put out, I just find them biased and a bit shady, really. I don't know. And most people won't say that because anybody that's an aspiring documentary filmmaker like myself is like, you want Netflix to want you, you know? Yeah. But I don't really think that's where I'd go. People ask me all the time, they're like, you know, what are some of your favorite documentaries? And most of mine are independent releases that you can find on Amazon Prime that came out 15 years ago or longer. you know?
It was so different, man. I'm 63. I'm a lot older than you. But like back in the 70s and the 80s, man, the documentary field was so different, man. Like Richard Albert.
I fall asleep to old crime investigation documentary pieces that used to be on TV in the 90s. And like, that's what I like, you know?
Yeah.
But things were a lot different back then.
Totally different, man. Totally different. So what are some of the, you were talking about a lot of these, first of all, how'd you get involved in like the legal aspect? Like, do you have any kind of background in, I guess, just in your criminal case?
So when I realized everything that I had been through after watching the documentaries and like kind of learning and working through my trauma, I started making phone calls. I started calling attorneys. And the way that I started making calls was I Googled Epstein victims lawyers. Right. And I just started calling them all. And because there was many, and this is something that a lot of people don't know either, because you only see a few victims in the media spotlight, but there was many victims. So there's lots of different attorneys everywhere who have worked with his victims. So I started by calling some of them. And I can talk about this now publicly because this particular part of this case is over. I ended up getting offers from some of the biggest attorneys that had worked on that case. One in particular that I ended up going with and retaining was Hatch and Rose out of New York. Amazing attorneys, amazing people. Unfortunately, I had my family in my ear at the time, and like some people that were maybe not looking at my best interest at heart. I ended up firing them and listen, this is gonna make you laugh. Yeah. Most rookie move ever. I was impatient. I was not getting results quick enough because I thought that this stuff happened overnight. Right. I fired my boss fire attorney, and I took my family attorney who'd only done criminal law in local South Florida. And we went back and we filed against some of my main abusers, and it was atrocious. We managed closing out a couple of lawsuits. I took very small payments, just get them over with, and to be able to use that money to start my nonprofit and get that off the ground and basically like put food on the table for my kids. But you know how lawsuits go. It was not even enough to buy a car. Okay. So I took that money and I fired my family attorney respectfully. Love him to death. And he knew too. He was like, I'm sorry. I loved you. I wanted to help you. And this is so much.
It's a specialty. Yeah, this is a
he
special.
was like,
this
is so much crazier than I could have. He had to do a 6-hour deposition with me, and you could tell by the end of it, he wanted to, So it was like, so I took a pause for it's going to be 2 years in July. I took a pause on the legal cases, and I started working on my documentary. I started doing my own investigations. I started working on the Joe thing.
Wait, before we get too far off topic, I just want to tell the audience again, if you're thinking of changing ships in midstream, you want to fire your attorney, keep in mind, I don't know what happened in your situation there, but that first attorney you signed a retainer with, he's going to get a piece of the next case. Usually it's around 6%. They're still involved.
Yeah.
And now you're on bad terms with him, and the next guy's looking at your side eye because you just fired the last guy. Big mess. You want to
So luckily, Hatch and Rose and the attorney that I was working with from there, they were so lovely. They totally understood because they're trained to handle victims. Yeah. I think they got where I was coming from, and they wished me the best of luck. I reached out to them and connected with them recently, and Hillary Nappy was the lawyer who was originally going to work on the case with me. I followed her on Instagram. She followed me back. I think she respects me and understands that I was a survivor. I had just realized what I had been through. That's another thing that I've learned too, that I share with other survivors. The moment I realized the abuse, I should have started the trauma healing. I should have gotten help. I shouldn't have started calling attorneys. That should come after, because I was not capable of being a defend or being not a defendant, but I wasn't in the right. There was no way I was.
You were the plaintiff, by the way. You were the plaintiff.
I was the plaintiff. There was no way I was able. I was having manic episodes. I was borderline suicidal. I was drinking. I was all over the place, and I did the steps in the wrong order because once again, I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the help. Victims' rights advocates are the ones that are supposed to explain these things to you, right? And none of that was ever given to me. So, but moving forward, I will say this to kind of like close up on that part in case you have any more questions about Joe is I have hired a new legal team. They're amazing. Wallace Miller. They're out of Chicago. They've done a lot of big cases for survivors. And my whole team is women, and it's been amazing. I took a call with them the other day, and there was like 7 of us on the call. Like that was a level of care that I haven't had as a survivor, and we're going back for names. And I can tell you so that other people can get excited. When some of these names drop, just based on what you're looking at, your mind is going to be blown. I'm ready to blow some people out of the water, and it's not going to be pretty, but I had to heal. And it took me 2 years of going to treatment, getting on meds, maintaining on the meds, detoxing and coming off the meds, because nobody wants to be on meds their whole life. It was a really slow, expensive process to get to the point where I could even have a conversation with an attorney or even give a testimony or do a deposition, So I've just kind of started that stuff back up again. And to be honest with you, I think that's why I kind of have like another soft place in my heart for Joe and this whole situation, because when I connected with Joe a couple of months ago and I started working on this case, it kind of gave me that fire again to like take care of myself, and get back to what I was working on. And yeah, I mean, it's been really good. But
so Nicole, do you have any lawsuits involving that couple with the Tiger King? Is anything going on?
So I don't have any lawsuits involving that couple. Just to be direct, I've never met them. I have nothing. I've never been in person with them. Through my own investigations, I have a few witnesses and people who have dealt with them directly, 2 women specifically, that, and we'll say, so that I don't get sued by them, allegedly sex trafficking. And let me remind like viewers, the definition of sex, if you get someone, if I'm like, hey, do you want to come to California from Florida and hang out? And you're like, yeah, but in my mind, you're going to come over there and then I'm going to basically facilitate you sleeping with someone. That is sex trafficking. Rape doesn't have to be involved. If someone is making money off of a sexual experience that you're having, not knowing, they're sex trafficking.
Right.
So based on what these victims are telling me, it is definition sex trafficking at the hands of James and Jeff and Lauren Lowe. And 1 female underage medical procedures as well. I think the reason why Joe's team thought that maybe I would be a good person to help with this is because when I reached out to the victims and some of these women, they were willing to speak with me because they saw that, like, you go to my page and you see what I've been through, what you've been through, and like I wear it like a badge of honor at this point in my life. And if there's anyone that is going to make you feel normal about what you've been through, it's probably going to be someone like me. So, and like a couple of the women that they had reached out to before they weren't talking and coming forward. And after I had connected with them, I was able to kind of relate to them and have stories with these women. And I'm still investigating. I have a call coming up with a girl that worked at the zoo that was very close to Joe for 12 years, who is I don't know if I can say this on the radio, but rape victim of Jeff and Lauren's. So, and was like severely abused by them during the time that she worked with the animals.
And again, that's an allegation. And if Jeff and
Lauren they're allegations.
If Jeff and Lauren want to send me a statement about that, I'll read the statement or even interview them if they want.
No one's been charged. Yeah. But what's crazy is so there's been a couple of people that have like called them out. So they had a victim, Ashley Morgan. Sorry, I believe that's her last name. I haven't looked at the stuff on Joe in like the last 2 weeks because I've been working on the thing with that school from Florida. But Ashley Weber, sorry, there you go. Ashley Weber, she's in jail right now, so we can't speak to her. But she spoke out in the second Netflix documentary. If you go back to, I have it, I'll send it to you. It's in my notes. I believe it's season 2, episode 2. It's like in the first like 15 to 30, it's between 15 and 30 minutes. She has an interview where she explains an act which by definition criminally would be sex trafficking, and it was just completely mulled over by all of all of us, you know. It wasn't until I went back and watched it again where I was like, that's crazy. Like, that is crazy. How are we not looking into this? I tried reaching out to her and getting a hold of her. She's not willing to speak. She's one of the people that's not willing to speak to anyone because Jeff and Lauren have bullied her, ruined her life. They posted her mugshot on their social media, which has like hundreds of thousands of followers. You know, she's a single mother. It's like, you know, hence why I use my
I gotta tell you,
mugshot.
everybody has this problems with Jeff, but I've tagged them in my interviews with Joe Exotic. I haven't heard a peep from them.
So that's actually what I was about to tell you.
Yeah.
So that's something that Joe's PR team person pointed out too, is I have publicly attacked them all. It's still on my page now. One of the videos has more views than any other video I posted, and I've gotten no letter. I have not had them come after. Nothing. And I don't know why. Maybe I like to think that like the little ego part of my brain is like, they're scared. They don't want my smoke. But yeah, nothing. And, like I said, I'm still investigating it. And as I'm finding out new details and having these conversations, I'm giving everything I'm finding out to Joe's team. He used to have someone in Florida kind of down here advocating for him. And since that person has kind of fallen off, because once again, when you kind of start connecting yourself to Joe, when you're a normal person, maybe not someone of influence or that has a platform that can fight back, they come after you. They come after the weak. So
now, are you talking about the video where they're in the bed and he's wearing the leather jacket and the hat in bed with that girl? What a creepy, weird scene is that?
So that's what's so perfect, right?
Yeah.
So you go back to season 2 of Tiger King, episode 2. Watch that episode 2, season 2 of Tiger King. Ashley Weber's interview where she looks traumatized, disheveled, unwell, and uncomfortable, being the only woman to first finally publicly state that Jeff and Lauren are predators. It pans into them crawling into bed with a young girl and the tigers. And it's like, what? It's like Netflix is like putting it in our faces, but because we're so desensitized to the over sexualization of women, you're not going to pick up on it, you know? But someone like me who's been highly traumatized by men and has suffered things like sex trafficking and that type of abuse, it sent chills up my spine. It made me feel sick to my stomach, you know? I instantly put myself in like a bed in Las Vegas in Caesar's Palace with like 2 other porn stars that were like 5 to 8 years older than me. And I'm 19. And it's like, this isn't normal. You know what I mean? This isn't going to shape me to be a strong, independent woman in the future. This is going to ruin my adult life if I don't, you know, make some changes and look at my mental health, which most of us don't. So it was weird. It killed me to watch that.
And if you can see somebody on it, like on Netflix, and you know what it takes behind the scenes to get them to appear halfway normal and to get them appear, you know, a lot of work gets to even get them to that point. And if you can still see that they're traumatized, and just can barely pull through, you know, you can just imagine what they're like when they're not filmed.
I posted a sizzle of the documentary that I'm working on, and it's like a minute clip on my Instagram, and like to me, it's really powerful. It's like one of the first times that I talk about being sex trafficked, like on camera, and I, you know, like I said, I pronounced. How do you say Giselle or Ghislaine? How do you say it?
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine. I pronounced her name wrong and I got murdered for it social media wise. And I was like, and I'm like sitting here, I'm like, do you not understand that I'm like a 40-year-old single mother in a room with 2 cameras and 8 people, and I am telling the most disgusting, volatile things that I have been through. And like, of course I'm like,
well, you know, I got to tell you something, okay? Because the first time I heard the correct pronunciation was about 2014 with Conchita Sarnoff, when I interviewed her about her book, Trafficking, about Epstein. And it turns out the only people who knew how to correctly pronounce it were friends of hers, okay, that actually traveled in those circles and were friends of them at Mar-a-Lago down there. Otherwise, everyone was pronouncing as you read it. Who would know?
Right.
Who know that name? Nobody knew that name.
Yeah. And like, it's funny, actually looking at like some of the stuff that you talked about the Epstein case was like, that's where I learned that, oh my God, my ADHD is brain farting. Cause you know, I always get excited when like, I think I know everything about a case or something. And then someone else is like, oh my God, that's a new information. Like, what was it? It was,
Rudy Giuliani?
No, it was something about the Epstein. Oh, that they had been reporting on Epstein a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, 2004, yeah.
Abuse.
Oh, no, 96, yeah, Maria Farmer reported.
People think that this is just Netflix broke it out of the water. Like, that was, like, I have chills again. Like, literally, like, literal chills, because...
Well, Nicole, I'll tell you something. I did the first radio show in 2013. I couldn't even find a guest. Nobody knew the name.
That's crazy.
But Maria Farmer and Sarah Ransom reported to the NYPD and the FBI back in 1996. That's why Maria Farmer is suing the FBI right now. The complaint was just filed like not even a month ago. And she's gonna win.
It's crazy because like you get that, and that just shows you like we really shouldn't trust a lot of our media and what's being shown. Because even someone like me that is like so rabbit holed this case, I was like, wait a minute, there was a book written like years ago about this, and like this guy was still, as of recently until right before he was arrested, was like it's just so crazy, it's so crazy to me. But I thought that was really, really amazing, and like I said, like it was cool that I was like, oh my god, I learned something new today. Like,
yeah, and before you were talking about, I wrote it down in my notes here, you were talking about all the young victims in Florida. Everyone wants to talk about the island and the airplanes and stuff like that. The majority of these victims, 3 a day, were coming from the Royal Palms High School in West Palm Beach over there, and from the local trailer parks. And everyone knew. Read the 2006 graduate transcript. I had them for free up in my Patreon. They're free, and you could read that. And the cop even said no one at Royal Palms High School was unaware of what was going on. All the kids at the trailer park said, don't go to visit that guy. He's a creep. Everyone knew.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. I mean, that was like that's a thing about my case with the school that I went to and that I was sent to in Florida was this school was like in the middle of the swamps of South Florida. You had to run through swamps, and then it was like a miles of a long road out of like military bases to get out of this school. I ran away 2 different times and made it to another county. And I was arrested and brought back to the school. And both times I was like, don't bring me back there. Something's not right. This isn't either. And then, the thing about that's also crazy about what was happening with the girls over there is I worked at a treatment facility. Like I worked in treatment for a few years. I was a case manager and did like BHT work. And I drove over that bridge that those girls got driven over every day to go to work because the treatment center is over there in the Gardens area, or on the other side, wherever that is. But, and it was just crazy because to grow up in Davie, Florida in a trailer on the other side of Dixie being the other side of the tracks, and to be constantly brought to people to be harmed. It's like, it's the same, you know what I mean? And what's scary is that, Epstein was like a celebrity and like maybe I was being abused by the system, but the system has been protecting people like Epstein their whole existence. So it's the same. There's
But when they executed the first search warrant, they found school transcripts from the Royal Palms High School. So he was in deep with the people running that school. But we're running. Let me say, we're doing on time. We're getting toward the end of the show. We are. Your journey in all this took you through the adult entertainment, but it took you through the adult exploitation industry too, as well, did it not?
So the way that I basically can like explain that today is, I was a product of my past. I was a very like hurt teenage girl that was like searching for her family. And, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was like, are you, like, join a cult or like, it was like, I was just kind of ripe for the picking. And I ended up meeting a man online who was like, promised me the world. He knew I wanted to do like band interviews and some type of like, and it's always how they pull you in. It's like, I can help you with your dreams. That's how they get you. And I ended up like corresponding with this man for a couple of months until I inevitably flew to New York City alone. And when I got there, he was much older than the man that I was talking to. He was about 300 pounds heavier than the pictures that he had been sharing. And he took me immediately to his Queens apartment where he brutally raped and assaulted me for like the first 3 days of this week-long trip. at some point it became too much, and I went to one of his friends and I said, please get me out of here. And they managed to get me away from him. This man, my abuser, owned a porn company and a porn website. Now, at the time when I met him, it was not a porn company and it was not a porn website. It was a website doing music and band interviews. It was marketed as being like punk rock and like different and independent. And like we were like respectfully kind of nude, you know, it was like art, like women empowerment, like we're different, right? So that's how the website started. Within like only a couple of months of me being intertied with them, I was like filming videos for pornography in like shady New Jersey hotels. And, you know, all the things I said that I would never do, I did. And all the things that you would never want for your daughter or any woman you loved, I went through and I experienced. And during it all happening, I was like, I'm just this strong, powerful woman. I've been through hell, but like I've taken my power back, and this is me, and this is my body, and this is what I have for the world. And really what it was, the real thing that was happening was that I hated myself so much. And I could not stand the person that I was. And every time I had sex with someone, and every time I was escorted out or I was trafficked, a little piece of my soul was chipped away. And I got to a point where, mind you, from 14 years old, I'm doing sex work. I'm 25 now. I'm signing at AVN Awards. I'm being nominated for AVN Awards. I'm making money. I'm making movies and money for mainstream porn companies, which was unheard of to be a girl with tattoos doing that. I'm just living my best life, right? Really, what I had realized is I was a product of my childhood. I was failed by my system. I was put into foster care. They didn't protect me. I was over-sexualized from a very young age. I was molested. I was raped. I was taken back to my abusers time and time again when I had ran away. And that basically molded me to not have any rights to my own body or my own free will. And I was very willing to do whatever to make these people happy. And finally, at 25 years old, there was a breaking point where I was working on like a really large budget movie. I had wrapped and my scene was done. I was on the box cover of this movie. We had some of the most famous porn stars in the world in this film, which had broken records because we were tattooed, and that wasn't really normal back then, 20 years ago. I wrapped on my shoot and I went to go watch another shoot, and there was a girl that they had brought in that had never done porn before. It was like a month after her 18th birthday. And me as a 25-year-old woman at this point, it was like looking in the mirror and I was like, enough. And it was in that moment where, and I think a lot of survivors understand what I'm about to say, but some people might try to use this against me. It was in that moment that God and the universe was like, the groomee is either going to become a groomer, or you are going to stand up and you are going to say enough and you are going to walk away. And while I wish it was a powerful exit, I had to escape. I went to another country and I stayed there for almost 3 years in hiding, basically. Not in hiding, but like basically just trying to, I wasn't in fear of my life, but I was in fear of going back because I had tried to leave multiple times. And every time I had tried to leave, I was brought right back. So I physically had to like leave another country. And if I wasn't able to get to where I was in tattooing and put in that hard work, which I don't even know how I got through it looking back now, like the way that I worked, I think it was just like disassociation the whole time, but I was able to really make something for myself in the end, but I'm part of the 1%. And we talk about the 1% in porn all the time. 1% of them make it big. 1% of us get out and do something better with our lives and actually heal.
It is such a business of manipulation. Even people with the best motives or with best intentions, it's a manipulative business. You're exploiting another person's. It's worse than capitalism in many ways. But the other thing too is so often, and what you described to me, and it's so it's the steps through this. You know what I mean? That women go through. First, you've been a victim, then you try and take back your power and all this kind of stuff, and you wind up in these situations. But so often too, people that are victims of this trafficking wind up traffickers themselves because it's all they know. And you grow up making money this way. It's the only thing you know. And then you see an opportunity. And it's just a tragic situation all over the place.
And one last thing I want to say about that, and I think this is super important too, and we kind of talked about this before we were recording, what is something that's really important that I wanted to get across as far as my own movement and things that are important to me goes, is whether you are enjoying being a porn star and whether you enjoy doing sex work, if you stand by your convictions and you are currently working in porn and doing sex work, I promise you, once you get out of that, it'll be impossible to have romantic relationships that are meaningful. It'll be impossible to have friendships that are meaningful. It'll be impossible to do day-to-day things that normal people that have not done sex work as a job, are more difficult for us. I have 2 daughters, I have 2 failed marriages, 2 different baby fathers, and looking back now, I was a problem a lot of the time because even though I was out of porn, I was still working in that kind of survival mentality where I just couldn't have meaningful relationships. That, as well as the fact that even out of porn, everyone knew. This is the last thing I'll share because I could go on about this for hours, but in 3 years ago, I was sexually assaulted in my tattoo shop by a male client. I was working on him after hours, which I never used to do, but the tattoo kind of extended. I asked the males that were there to stay with me and they left. They left me alone with him. And he attacked me in the shop. Now, this man that attacked me, I had been client for 3 years previous. I had tattooed him and been around him numerous times. He'd never even so much as made a pass, nothing, right? The moment he had me alone, he came on to me. I told him no multiple times. I said I didn't want to. My words of consent didn't matter. He brutally assaulted me in my shop. I ended up having a manic episode after, having to go back to treatment, file police reports, get an attorney, try to get justice, because now I've already been a victim to this before. I know what I need to do to feel better. So I think, right? And the reason why that happened to me in my tattoo shop, even as an adult, is because when you Google my name, there is pictures of men doing things to me that are just absolutely volatile, where it looks like I enjoy it. My words of consent don't matter. Why? Well, she used to do porn. She's saying no, but she really means yes. That's something that I have dealt with out of my porn career my whole entire life since I stopped doing porn. It has never stopped. I am constantly having to fight off men. And I don't think I'm the cutest girl in the world. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm anything that special. But when you can Google my name and you see those types of videos online that I can never get rid of, lawsuits included, are still there for people to see. My children someday will see men exposing themselves in front of my face. That is always there. That never goes away. And I don't think they think about that 20 years down the road. And that's something that they should really put in internally and sit with it for a while, because I don't think they realize how hard it is to be someone like me today, Yeah.
We had a guest on this show who she had done a clip that became hysterically viral, hundreds of millions of views. And to make it worse, her name is similar to a very famous person's name too. So she deals with this. It's been 20, 30 years now herself, and it still comes up. It's when you Google this other person, her name and video come up. But Nicole Lee Pettis, thank you so much. You can find Nicole Lee Tattooer on Instagram and Twitter, Broke Babe Films and Twitter. You can't thank it enough, man, and keep us updated on the work you're doing here. Okay?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'll probably be annoying you at some point and pick your brain, because I find what you do really interesting. And thank you for all the work that you do, because you're helping a lot of women for sure.
Not much brain, but you can pick my nose. Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. Okay, I'm gonna hang up. Okay, I love you.
Okay, so bye.
Bye.